Most women find receipts or smell perfume, but I found a brand new key sliding out of his jacket pocket. It was attached to a cheap heart-shaped keychain that definitely did not belong to me. My 6-year-old daughter asked why it looked like ours, and that innocent question turned my blood to ice. I did not scream. Instead, I packed our lives into boxes and left him with exactly what he deserved. A house full of nothing but silence. My name is Megan Hart, and up until 7 o'clock this evening, I thought my biggest problem was the red wine stain on the rug. I was wrong. I was holding Ethan's gray blazer, the one he wore to his client dinners, when a metallic clatter hit the hardwood floor. It was not loose change. It was a single silver key on a keychain I had never seen before. A tacky pink plastic heart with gold lettering stamped into it that read, A+E. Lila, my 6-year-old daughter, wandered into the laundry room holding her juice box. She looked down at the object on the floor, her eyes wide and curious. "Mommy," she asked, pointing a small finger, "why does that key look exactly like ours?" Her voice was soft, but the words hit me like a physical blow. I froze. I bent down and picked it up. It felt heavy in my palm. I pulled my own set of keys from my pocket and held them side by side. I compared the ridges, the valleys, and the flat edge at the tip. They were identical. The only difference was the texture. Mine was worn smooth from years of use, dull from being tossed in purses and dropped on counters. This one was brilliant, sharp, and jagged. It was fresh. It had been cut yesterday, maybe even today. The front door opened. "I'm home," Ethan called out. His voice was cheerful, the voice of a man who had nothing to hide, or so he thought. I shoved the key into my pocket just as he walked into the kitchen. He looked handsome, tired in that way that usually made me want to pour him a drink and rub his shoulders. He kissed the top of Lila's head. "Hey, princess," he said, then turned to me with that easy, practiced smile. "Smells good in here. What's for dinner?" "Babe." I looked at him, really looked at him. I did not see my husband of 8 years. I saw a stranger standing in my kitchen with a grenade in his pocket, waiting for the right moment to pull the pin. "Pasta," I said. My voice sounded hollow to my own ears, but he did not notice. He never noticed anymore. "Great. I'm going to jump in the shower real quick. Long day." As soon as the water started running upstairs, I moved. I did not run. I walked with the terrifying precision of a bomb disposal unit. His phone was on the nightstand. I knew the code, 1989. His birth year, predictable. My hands did not shake. I swiped up. No messages on the main screen. I opened his texts. There it was. Top of the list. Ava. The message was time-stamped 40 minutes ago. Key works. "See you Friday." I did not cry. Tears would have been a waste of hydration. This was not a flirtation. This was a breach of security. He had given a stranger a key to the house where my daughter slept. He had invited a predator into our cave. I pulled out my own phone and took pictures of the screen. I recorded a video of me scrolling through the thread, capturing the contact number, the dates, and the times. Then, I used the hem of my shirt to wipe the glass screen of his phone, removing my fingerprints. I placed it back exactly 2 inches from the edge of the table, just how he liked it. I walked down the hall to Lila's room. She was already in her pajamas, reading a book on her bed. She looked so small, so safe. If I screamed, if I threw plates, if I set his clothes on fire on the front lawn, she would be the one traumatized. She would remember the noise and the fear. "I love you, Bug," I whispered from the doorway. "Love you too." "Mommy," she murmured without looking up. I backed away. Rage is a fire, but revenge is a structure. You have to build it brick by brick. If I made a scene tonight, he would spin it. He would call me crazy. He would say it was for a pet sitter, a neighbor, or a misunderstanding. He would gaslight me until the ground beneath my feet dissolved. No. If he wanted to give his mistress access to our home, I would make sure there was no home left to access. I walked back to the kitchen. The water was still running upstairs. I took the shiny new key out of my pocket. I placed it squarely in the center of the granite island. It caught the overhead light, gleaming like a weapon. I grabbed a sticky note and a pen. I did not write a letter. I did not ask why. I wrote 3 short phrases: taking Lila, clearing out, leaving a void. I left the note next to the key. The game had officially started. You have to understand that I serve as the operations manager for Vantage Row Solutions. My professional life is built on logistics, efficiency, and the absolute certainty that every variable can be controlled if you have a robust enough spreadsheet. I am not a woman who loses her keys. I am not a woman who forgets anniversaries. I am the woman who remembers the social security numbers of everyone in the household and schedules dental appointments 6 months in advance. I deal in facts. And for a long time, I thought my marriage was just another well-managed project. Ethan was not always a monster. In the beginning, he was warm, but it was a specific kind of warmth. It was strategic. He had this way of looking at you that made you feel like you were the only person in the room, the chosen one. It was intoxicating until you realized that the warmth was just a setting he could turn off when he no longer needed something from you. By the time we bought the Colonial in Port Alder, that warmth had cooled into a systematic, polite detachment. Port Alder is one of those riverside towns where the lawns are manicured to within an inch of their lives, and the neighbors judge you by the cleanliness of your gutters. We fit right in. Or rather, I made sure we fit in. The deed to the house has both our names on it. But if you look closely at the mortgage papers, my name is listed first. My income was steady. My credit score was immaculate. Ethan was in sales, a volatile industry where he rode the highs and ignored the lows. I was the anchor. He was the sail that flapped uselessly in the wind whenever things got tough. After Lila was born, the dynamic shifted. Ethan started using phrases that sounded helpful but felt restrictive. "Let me handle the bills. Meg," he would say, taking the stack of mail from my hands with a gentle tug. "You do enough with the baby and work. I can manage the boring stuff." I let him. I thought I was being a good partner, sharing the load. In reality, I was handing him the keys to the vault. His family did not help. Diane, his mother, and Brooke, his sister, always looked at me with a mixture of awe and pity. They treated me like a high-performing draft horse. "Oh, Megan." Diane would sigh at Thanksgiving, swirling her Chardonnay. "You are such a capable girl. I do not know what Ethan would do without you to keep him grounded." "Yeah," Brooke would add, scrolling through her phone. "You are like the engine. Ethan is the paint job." They meant it as a compliment, but it always felt like they were appraising my resale value. I was useful. I kept the lights on. I kept the credit cards paid. I was too busy being the perfect mother, the high-achieving employee, and the accommodating wife to notice the cracks in the foundation. I ignored the small, odd auto deductions on the bank statements. $30 here, $50 there. I told myself it was gas, or lunch, or office supplies. I trusted him because that is what wives do. Then there was Ava Sterling. Ethan introduced her as an old friend from college. She was stunning in a way that felt manufactured sharp angles, expensive skin treatments, and a polite demeanor that felt like a scalpel. She came to our barbecues. She drank my wine. And she always, without fail, called me by that grating pet name. "Hey, babe," she would say, tilting her head. "Ethan talks about you all the time. You are just Superwoman, aren't you?" It sounded like praise, but her eyes were dead. They were assessing me, looking for weakness. I remember the first time she came to our house. We were standing on the front porch, saying goodbye, while Ethan was laughing at something she said. Ava was not looking at him. She was looking at the front door. She stared at the brass deadbolt for 5 seconds too long. It was a hungry look. At the time, I thought she was just admiring the hardware. Now I know she was wondering how easy it would be to bypass. I look back at that version of myself and I want to shake her, but I have to be kind to her. I was not tricked because I was stupid. I was tricked because I believed that family was the place where you were supposed to be safe. I believed that when a man says, "I love you," he is not simultaneously calculating how much equity he can drain from your bank account. I was wrong. And being wrong hurts, but it also clarifies things. The fog is gone now. I see the ledger clearly, and for the first time in years, the numbers are about to balance in my favor. I became an actress in my own home. I poured coffee, I packed lunches, and I kissed Ethan goodbye on the cheek, all while my mind was running a forensic audit of our entire life. I started with his calendar. It was color-coded and meticulously shared with me, a feature we had set up years ago for efficiency. I scrolled back through the last 2 months. Every single Friday evening was blocked out. Client dinner, regional strategy review, late site visit, and every single one of those Fridays aligned perfectly with the date stamp on the text message I had seen. Key works. I decided to test the theory. On the next Friday, when he claimed he had a networking event in the city, I waited until 8 o'clock. I called him. It rang 4 times, then went to voicemail. I did not leave a message. Instead, I opened the Find My app on my phone. He had turned off his location sharing months ago, claiming it drained his battery, but he had forgotten to disable the location tagging on the shared family iPad that he sometimes took for presentations. The blue dot was not at the convention center in the city. It was stationary in a residential neighborhood 20 miles west. It was hovering right over the apartment complex where Ava lived. The next morning, while Ethan slept in late, supposedly exhausted from networking, I went through the kitchen trash. It was degrading. I had to push past coffee grounds and vegetable peelings. But I found what I was looking for. It was a crumpled receipt. The top part with the store name had been torn off, but the item line was clear. Duplicate key. Brass. The date was the day before he came home with it. He had not just been careless. He had been arrogant. He threw the evidence in our own bin because he did not think I was smart enough or suspicious enough to look. The stress began to manifest physically. I have always been healthy, but suddenly I could not sleep. My heart would race for no reason while I was sitting at my desk. On Tuesday, during a budget meeting at Vantage Row Solutions, the room started to tilt. The voices of my colleagues sounded like they were underwater. I gripped the edge of the mahogany table, trying to breathe, but the air felt too thin. I collapsed. I woke up in the back of an ambulance, but I refused to go to the emergency room. I made them take me to Linden Mercy Clinic, a smaller urgent care center where I knew the wait times were shorter. The doctor, a kind woman with tired eyes, checked my vitals. "Your blood pressure is through the roof." "Megan," she said, writing on her clipboard, "this looks like acute stress response. Is there someone you can call to drive you home? A husband?" I looked at my phone. I hesitated. For the first time in 8 years, the thought of calling Ethan did not bring relief. It brought nausea. "No," I said quietly. "I will take a cab." I did send him a text, though. I wanted to see what he would do. "I am at Linden Mercy. Had a dizzy spell. Lila is with the sitter." I stared at the screen, watching the 3 dots appear and disappear. Finally, the response came through. "Okay." 2 letters. "No. Are you okay?" "No, I am coming. Just acknowledgement of receipt." I sat in the waiting room, feeling the cold plastic of the chair against my back. I opened social media to distract myself from the pounding in my head. That is when I saw it. Brooke had posted a story on Instagram just 10 minutes ago. The caption read, "Peaceful Friday. No drama. Family comes first." But the photo told a different story. It was a picture of a table at a sports bar. In the background, slightly out of focus but unmistakable, was Ethan. He was throwing his head back, laughing at something someone off camera had said. He was not working. He was not worried about his wife in the clinic. He was drinking beer and having the time of his life. I zoomed in on the edge of the frame. A woman's hand was resting on his forearm. On her wrist was a thin gold bracelet that I had seen Ava wear a dozen times. I lowered the phone. A scream built up in my throat, hot and acidic, but I swallowed it down. If I drove there now and made a scene, I would look like the hysterical wife. I would be the villain who ruined their peaceful Friday. I walked out of the clinic and stood in the parking lot. The sky was a flat, slate gray, threatening rain. I took a deep breath of the cool air. The pain in my chest was still there, but it had changed texture. It was no longer the soft bruise of heartbreak. It was hardening into something sharp and useful. Ethan did not just cheat on me. He did not just lie. By sending that okay, he had erased me. To him, I was no longer a partner or a person. I was just an obstacle that was temporarily out of the way. I unlocked my car door. I was not going home to cry. I was going home to prepare. If he wanted to treat me like I did not exist, I would show him exactly what the world looked like when I was truly gone. The notification lit up my phone screen like a warning flare. It was from Instagram. Brooke, my sister-in-law, had tagged me in a post. My stomach tightened before I even unlocked the device, a primal instinct warning me that humiliation was incoming. I opened the app. The photo was high resolution, filtered to perfection. The caption read, in a loopy, cheerful font, "Family comes first. So grateful for this crew." But looking at the image, I felt like I was looking at a funhouse mirror reflection of my own life. It was a group shot taken at the bar from Friday. In the center stood Ethan, tucked neatly under his arm, smiling that tight, polished smile, was Ava. They were not standing like friends. They were standing like a unit. Her hand rested possessively on his chest, right over his heart, a space that was supposed to be mine. I was nowhere in the frame, yet I was tagged. A digital ghost haunting a party I was not invited to. I scrolled down to the comments. A mutual friend from the neighborhood, Sarah, had asked the obvious question, "Great pic." But where is Megan Brooks' reply was pinned right underneath. Posted 3 minutes ago? Oh, you know Megan. She is busy, working on herself. The phrase hit me like a slap. Working on herself. It was a masterclass in passive aggression. It implied I was unstable, selfish, or falling apart, while they were out celebrating family. It painted a picture of Ethan as the patient husband enduring a difficult wife. I wanted to throw the phone across the room. I wanted to scream, but I did neither. Instead, I took a screenshot. I captured the caption, the date, the time, and the location tag. I captured Brooke's snide comment. I captured the way Ethan looked at Ava, a look devoid of guilt. I saved it all to a hidden folder I had named The Ledger. This was no longer just heartbreak, it was evidence of a coordinated character assassination. Later that evening, the front door opened. Ethan walked in carrying a large pizza box, the smell of pepperoni filling the hallway. He was humming. "Hey, ladies," he announced, his voice sickeningly sweet. I picked up dinner. Who wants a slice? He was performing. This was the good dad act, designed to cover the stench of betrayal. He kissed Lila on the head and offered me a slice with a smile that did not quite reach his eyes. "Thanks," I said. My voice flat. We sat at the table. Lila was happily chewing on her crust, swinging her legs. Then, with the terrifying innocence of a child, she dropped the bomb. "Daddy," she said between bites, "is Miss Ava coming over to play with my dolls again?" The room went silent. I saw Ethan's jaw tighten. He chewed slowly. "When did I say that?" "Sweetie," he asked, his voice careful. "Yesterday," Lila chirped. "You said Miss Ava would come over when Mommy goes away." I felt the blood drain from my face, but I forced myself to keep chewing. He was planning it. He was not just cheating. He was planning to replace me in my own home, in front of my own child. I waited until Lila ran off to watch cartoons before I turned to him. I kept my face smooth, unbothered. "By the way," I said casually, "I found a receipt for a key copy. Did you cut a new key for the house?" Ethan did not flinch. He did not blink. He looked me right in the eye, a skill that must have served him well in sales. "Oh, yeah," he said, reaching for a napkin. "I got a spare made. Just for emergencies. You know, in case we get locked out or something." I put it in the drawer. He lied so easily. It flowed out of him like breath. He turned back to his phone, dismissing the topic as if it were the weather. I realized then that I was up against a professional liar. He was building a narrative where he was the responsible one, the one preparing for emergencies, while I was the absent wife, working on herself. If I wanted to survive this, I needed to stop reacting and start writing my own script. I stood up and walked to the backyard. The air was cold. I dialed a number I knew by heart. "Hello." My mother's voice was crisp, clear, and reassuring. Linda Hart did not do small talk. "Mom," I said, my voice trembling for the first time that day, "I need you." There was a pause on the other end. She did not ask why. She did not ask if I was exaggerating. "Are you and Lila safe?" she asked. "Yes," I said, "for now, but I need you here." "I will be there in the morning," she said, and the line went dead. I looked back at the house through the sliding glass door. I looked at the lock mechanism. I thought of Ava's hand on that key, turning it, invading the sanctuary I had built for my daughter. I made a silent vow right there in the dark. "No one," I whispered to the cold wind, "no one walks into my daughter's world like that again." My mother, Linda, arrived at 9 in the morning with a suitcase in one hand and a terrifying level of focus in her eyes. She did not hug me. She did not ask for tea. She sat down at my dining room table, pointed to my laptop, and said 3 words that frightened me more than any threat Ethan could ever make. "Show me the finances." I logged into our joint accounts. I thought I knew our money. I was the one who paid the mortgage, the utilities, and the grocery bills, but I had been looking at the surface, while Ethan had been tunneling underneath. My mother put on her reading glasses and began to scroll, her finger tracing the lines on the screen like a detective dusting for prints. It took her less than an hour to dismantle my entire understanding of my marriage. "Megan," she said, her voice dangerously calm, "why are we paying $1,200 a month to a property management company in the city?" I looked at the entry. "Studio 44 Management?" "I do not know," I stammered. "Ethan said he needed a storage unit for his samples." "This is not storage," my mother said, opening a new tab and typing in the address. "This is a rental payment for a loft apartment. And look at the tenant name listed on the invoice reference. It was abbreviated, but clear enough. B. Rowe. Brooke. My sister-in-law. I felt the air leave my lungs. Ethan was paying for his sister's art studio with the money I earned from my overtime shifts. But that was just the beginning. My mother kept digging. She found an auto insurance policy for 3 vehicles. We only owned 2. The third was a Honda Civic, a car I had never sat in, registered to a garaging address 3 towns over. Then there were the transfers. Small, irregular amounts ranging from $200 to $500, sent via a payment app linked to the credit card I paid off every month. The recipient was labeled simply as A.S. Ava Sterling. I felt sick. I scrolled further back. There were charges for a jewelry store in the mall, a necklace I had never received. There were hotel charges for business trips on weekends when he claimed he was staying with colleagues. My mother stopped scrolling. She took off her glasses and looked at me. Her face was not soft. It was hard, like stone. "Megan," she said, "you are not a wife. You are a bank." I sat there, frozen. The betrayal was not just emotional. It was financial plunder. I felt stupid. I felt used. I started clicking through his emails, searching for anything else. In his trash folder, I found a document that made my blood turn cold. It was a loan application status update, cash out refinance request, pending signature. He was trying to refinance our house. He was trying to pull out the my equity, and likely run with the cash. He was preparing to liquidate our life before I even knew it was over. Suddenly, my phone on the table began to buzz. It vibrated violently against the wood. Ethan. I let it ring. It stopped, then started again immediately. Ethan. Then a text from his mother. Diane, call back immediately. House has issues. They were panicking. I stared at the phone, a strange sense of power rising in my chest. I typed a single reply to Diane. I am busy. I put the phone down. Just then, the family iPad, which was sitting on the kitchen counter charging, lit up with a notification. It was synced to Ethan's iMessage account. The name on the screen was Ava. The message was short, frantic, and revealing. Why is the key not working? I stared at the words. The timestamp was now. I realized what was happening. I had changed the deadbolt core early that morning before my mother arrived, a simple swap I had learned from a YouTube video. I had not told Ethan now while I was sitting here uncovering their theft. They were standing on my front porch, trying to use the key he had stolen from our life to open a door that was no longer theirs. They had scheduled a little rendezvous in my home, thinking I was at work and Lila was at school. They had planned to walk into my sanctuary, and now they were standing outside, confused and locked out. My mother saw the message. She saw the rage building in my eyes, the way my hands were curling into fists. She reached out and covered my hand with hers. Megan, she said firmly, do not scream. You do not need to scream. You need a lawyer. I looked at her, and then I looked at the locked front door. I nodded slowly. I was done crying. It was time to go to war. Caleb Morgan did not look like the kind of lawyer who chased ambulances. He looked like the kind who buried bodies legally. He sat behind a glass desk that was completely empty except for a single legal pad, listening to me recount the last 48 hours. He did not offer sympathy. He offered strategy. You want to keep your daughter safe, and you want to ensure they cannot touch your assets, Caleb said, leaning forward. We do this by the book. We do not give them ammunition to call you unstable. We lock them out, step by step. I left his office and went straight to the bank. I opened a new checking account solely in my name. I sat in the cubicle with the banker and filled out the direct deposit change form for Vantage Rose Solutions. My salary, which had supported our lifestyle for years, would no longer hit the joint account. I left exactly $2,000 in the old account, enough to cover the mortgage and utilities for 1 month. Caleb had warned me not to drain it completely. If you leave zero, he had said, his lawyer will argue financial abandonment. Leave enough to keep the lights on, but cut off the play money. Next, I logged into the credit card portal. I found the card ending in 4120, the one Ethan carried, the one that had paid for Ava's hotel rooms. I clicked Cancel Card. Reason lost or stolen. In a way, it was true. My trust had been stolen. Then came the digital purge. I changed the passwords for our bank, our investment accounts, the electric bill, and even the Netflix account. I enabled two-factor authentication for everything, linking it to my new burner phone that Ethan did not know existed. Each time I clicked Save Changes, I felt a little lighter, like I was welding a door shut behind me. When I got home, I accessed the community security portal. Our gated neighborhood tracked every entry code used at the main gate. I downloaded the logs for the past 3 months. There it was. On 3 separate Saturdays when I had taken Lila to visit my mother, my personal gate code had been used to let a guest vehicle in. The timestamp was always 20 minutes after I had left. He had been bringing her here while my car engine was still warm. I went to the electronics store and bought 3 miniature cameras. I spent the afternoon hiding them. One went on top of the kitchen cabinets, obscured by a fake ivy plant. One went in the living room, tucked between books on the shelf. The last one pointed directly at the front door. I did not tell Ethan. I did not tell anyone. If they broke in, or if they tried to stage a scene to make me look bad, the cloud server would catch it all. I sat at my laptop and created a folder named Evidence. I dragged in the screenshots of Brooke's Instagram post. I added the photo of the Key Works text. I added the gate logs. Then, I opened the bank statement again to categorize the expenses. That is when I saw it. A charge from 6 months ago that I had missed because it was listed under government services. It was a filing fee to the Secretary of State. I clicked on the transaction details. It was a registration fee for a limited liability company. I went to the State Business Registry website and searched my own name. There it was. Hart Consulting LLC. Registered agent Megan Hart. Principal address Our Home. I had never opened a consulting firm. I called Caleb immediately. My hands were trembling as I held the phone. "Caleb," I said, my voice tight. "There is a company registered in my name." I did not open it. There was a silence on the other line, heavy and thoughtful. "If he used your social security number to open a business entity without your consent," Caleb said, his voice dropping an octave, "then this is no longer just a divorce case. Megan, this is identity theft. This is federal fraud." I felt a chill run down my spine, but it was quickly replaced by a strange, icy calm. Ethan had not just cheated on his wife, he had set up a financial vehicle to potentially launder money or take out loans in my name. He had turned me into a mule. "Okay," I said. "What do we do?" "We wait," Caleb said. "Let him walk into the trap." I looked around the house. I looked at the walls I had painted, the floors I had cleaned. For days, I had been mourning the loss of this home. But now, I realized I did not need to fight for the house. The house was not the prize. It was the bait. I was going to leave it empty. I was going to let him think he had won. And when he stepped inside, thinking he was free to start his new life with Ava, he would find that the only thing waiting for him was a felony charge for 3 days. I lived with a man I planned to destroy, and I treated him with the gentle indifference of a nurse tending to a terminal patient. I cooked his favorite roast chicken on Tuesday. I ironed his shirts on Wednesday. I sat at the kitchen table and helped Lila with her spelling words while he scrolled through his phone on the sofa, smiling at texts that I knew were from work. I was so convincing that I started to scare myself. I realized that deception is not a skill you are born with. It is a callus you develop when the truth rubs your skin raw for too long. Thursday morning. The air in the house felt heavy, like the pressure drop before a tornado. I waited until Ethan's car pulled out of the driveway at 7:30. He was heading to a quarterly sales review, which meant he would be stuck in a conference room until at least 4 in the afternoon. It was the perfect window. I had hired a moving crew under my mother's maiden name to avoid any alerts hitting our joint accounts or email notifications. They arrived at 10 o'clock sharp. Before they started, I drove Lila to Tessa's house. Tessa met us at the door, her eyes red from crying on my behalf. But she put on a brave face for my daughter. Mommy has to do some boring grown-up cleaning at the house. I told Lila, smoothing her hair, "You are going to have a sleepover here tonight. It will be fun." Lila hugged me tight. "Will you come get me tomorrow, I promise?" I said, and my voice cracked just a little. "I will never be far away." I drove back to the house and unleashed the movers. I did not want them to be careful. I wanted them to be fast. We stripped the house to its bones. I packed every piece of clothing I owned. I cleared out Lila's entire room, her bed, her toys, her bookshelf, leaving nothing behind but dust bunnies. I took the family photos off the walls, but I was selective. I kept the pictures of Lila and me. I left every framed photo of Ethan face down on the floor where they had hung, glass against wood. But I did not just empty the house. I curated the emptiness. I wanted the space to look like a crime scene where the victim had simply evaporated. I left a broken dining chair in the corner of the living room. One leg snapped off. I scattered a few empty cardboard boxes in the hallway. In the kitchen, I took the wall clock down, removed the batteries, and hung it back up. The hands were frozen at 12 o'clock. Time had stopped in this house. Then came the most crucial part of the trap. I got my toolkit and went to the front door. I did not change the entire lock set because that would look obvious from the outside. Instead, I swapped out the cylinder for a new one I had bought at a hardware store 3 towns over. I kept the original brass handle and the exterior faceplate. To anyone standing on the porch, it looked exactly the same. When Ava arrived tonight with her shiny new key, it would slide into the slot perfectly. It would feel right, but it would not turn. I made the calls I had been dreading but enjoying in equal measure. I called the electric company, the water department, and the internet provider. I scheduled all services to be suspended effective at 5 o'clock that evening. It was petty, perhaps, but I wanted them to sit in the dark. I wanted the silence to be absolute. By 2 o'clock, the trucks were gone. The house echoed. Every step I took sounded like a gunshot. It smelled of floor wax and stale air. I walked to the kitchen island, the only surface I had left clean. I placed a single white envelope in the center. Inside was a note card with 2 sentences written in my sharpest handwriting. Do not call me. All communication goes through my lawyer. I walked out the front door and locked it with my new key. I stood there for a moment, listening to the neighborhood sounds: a dog barking, a lawnmower in the distance. They were the sounds of normal life, a life I was leaving behind. I realized then that I was not leaving a home. I was leaving a stage set. I got into my car and looked back one last time. People think revenge is about screaming and throwing things. They are wrong. Revenge is silence. Revenge is an empty room where the person who hurt you has to finally sit alone with their own echo. Enjoy the quiet, Ethan, I whispered. Then I put the car in drive and did not look back. I sat in the darkness of my mother's rental apartment, the blue glow of my tablet illuminating my face like a ghost. It was 8:15 in the evening, on the screen. The live feed from the hidden camera above my front door showed a grainy but unmistakable image. Ethan and Ava were standing on the porch. Ava looked triumphant. She was wearing a dress I had never seen, something expensive and backless, clearly dressed for a victory lap. She reached into her clutch and pulled out the key, the one with the pink heart keychain. She stepped forward with the confidence of a woman who believed she had already won. Here, she said, her voice tinny through the microphone. Let me do the honors. She slid the key into the lock. I watched her wrist turn. Nothing happened. She frowned, jiggled it, and tried again. It is stuck, she said, stepping back. Ethan, it fits, but it will not turn. Ethan laughed, a nervous, arrogant sound. Give it here. You probably just do not know how to wiggle it right. He took the key. He shoved it in. He twisted it hard to the right. The lock did not budge. I saw the confusion wash over his face, replacing the arrogance. He tried again, harder this time, bracing his shoulder against the wood. The door remained a solid, immovable barrier. Megan, he called out. His voice was casual at first, but when only silence answered him, the tone shifted. He pounded on the wood with his fist. Megan, open the door. I know you are in there. My phone, sitting on the table beside me, began to vibrate. It danced across the surface, buzzing angrily. I watched the screen. Ethan calling. I let it ring, then again and again. In the span of 10 minutes, he called me 37 times. Then came the texts. Where are you? Where is Lila? What the hell is this game for the first time in months? I felt a surge of adrenaline that was not fear. It was satisfaction. He was panicking. Then a new number popped up. It was Diane. I let it go to voicemail, then played it back immediately. Her voice was shrill, trembling with indignation. Megan, answer the phone. Ethan is outside his own house. Are you trying to humiliate this family? Think about how this looks. I almost laughed. She was not worried about her granddaughter. She was not worried that her son was locked out. She was worried about the neighbors watching. She was worried about how it looked on the screen. The situation was deteriorating. Ava had stepped away from the door and was looking at Ethan with narrowed eyes. "Ethan," she said, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. You told me the house was yours. You said she was just living there on your charity." Ethan spun around, sweat glistening on his forehead. "It is mine. She changed the locks. That is illegal. She is crazy." "If it is your house," Ava said, crossing her arms, "why does your key not work? And why are you screaming like a burglar?" Ethan did not answer her. He lost it. He backed up and kicked the door, the sound distorting on the audio feed. "Open this door," he screamed. That was when the flashing yellow lights appeared in the driveway, the private security patrol for our gated community. My neighbor, Mrs. Gable, must have called them. 2 officers stepped out of the vehicle, hands resting near their belts. "Sir," the lead officer said firmly, "we have a report of a disturbance. Do you live here?" "Yes." "I live here," Ethan shouted, pointing at the house. "My wife changed the locks. Can I see some identification with this address?" Sir Ethan reached for his wallet, then froze. His driver's license still had his mother's address on it. He had never bothered to update it because he claimed the DMV lines were too long. He looked at the officer, then at the house, then at Ava. I do not have it on me," Ethan stammered, "but I have the key. Look, I have a key that does not work. Sir," the officer noted dryly, "we are going to have to ask you to step off the property." I clipped the video file, the argument, the kick, the police interaction, and attached it to an email. I sent it to Caleb with a single subject line, "Attempted break-in." 5 minutes later. Caleb texted back, filing for an emergency protection order. "This is perfect." Ethan, desperate and humiliated as the security guards escorted him to his car, pulled out his phone. Minutes later, a notification popped up on my social media. He had started a live stream. "My wife has kidnapped my daughter," he yelled into the camera, looking wild-eyed. "She emptied the house and took my child. If anyone sees Megan Hart, call the police. I watched him dig his own grave." I had already sent the custody agreement and the notarized letter regarding our temporary location to the local precinct hours ago. The police knew exactly where Lila was. They knew she was safe. His false report would only be another nail in his legal coffin. I looked at the screen one last time. Ethan was standing by his car, the security lights casting long shadows around him. He looked at the house, the dark, empty shell that he had taken for granted. He looked at the key in his hand, the shiny brass piece of metal that was supposed to unlock his double life. Now, it was just a piece of trash. Game over. "Ethan," I said to the empty room, "and you lost." Caleb Morgan's office was becoming my second home, a sanctuary of mahogany and cold, hard facts. He spread the documents across his desk like a general laying out a battle map. We had the security logs showing the unauthorized entries. We had the text message saying "Key works." We had the bank statements showing the jewelry, the hotels, and the transfers. But the smoking gun was the refinance application Ethan had started but never finished. He was trying to liquidate 40% of the home's equity, Caleb said, tapping the paper with his pen. He was going to take the cash, likely dump it into an account you could not touch, and leave you with the debt. But he got greedy. He waited too long. Then came the discovery that made my blood run cold. Caleb's forensic accountant had traced the digital footprint of Hart Consulting LLC, the shell company registered in my name. It was not Ethan who filed the paperwork. It was Brooke. She had used my social security number and our home address, but the recovery email linked back to her personal account. "They were building credit in your name," Caleb explained, his voice low and serious. The plan was likely to take out small business loans, max them out, and then default. "You would have been on the hook for hundreds of thousands of dollars. I felt a wave of nausea. This was not just a cheating husband. This was a family of parasites. But the biggest turning point came from the last person I expected. Late that afternoon, Caleb received a digital packet from an attorney representing Ava Sterling. I expected a lawsuit. I expected a denial. Instead, what we got was a surrender. It seems, Caleb said, a small, grim smile touching his lips, that Ms. Sterling is not happy about being locked out, and she is even less happy about realizing she was not the only one being lied to. Ethan had played us both. He had told Ava that we were separated, that the house was solely his, and that I was just a squatter he was too nice to evict. When the key did not work and the police arrived, the illusion shattered. Ava realized she was not the future wife. She was an accessory to a crime. To protect herself from being sued for trespassing or conspiracy, she turned on him. Caleb opened the file she had sent. It was a treasure trove of screenshots. There was a text from Ethan to Ava, dated 2 weeks ago. Do not worry about her. Megan never checks the statements. She is too busy playing mom. There was another one, sickening in its detail. I made a copy of the key today. Come over Friday. We can christen the bed before I kick her out for good. I read the words and felt a strange detachment. The pain was gone, replaced by a steely resolve. These messages were enough to destroy his character in any family court in the state. I want full custody. I told Caleb, I do not care about the retirement accounts. I do not care about the furniture. I want Lila, and I want to make sure he cannot come near our finances ever again. We have enough for a restraining order and a strong case for sole custody, Caleb assured me. This is predatory behavior. Ethan, meanwhile, was spiraling. His tactics shifted by the hour. 1 minute, my phone would light up with a pleading email. Meg, please. I am sorry. I messed up. Let's just sit down and talk. Think about our family. 10 minutes later, when I did not reply, the tone would snap. You will regret this. You are kidnapping my daughter. I will have you arrested. You are crazy. He was trying to bait me. He wanted me to scream back so he could record it and play the victim. I gave him nothing. Silence is the loudest noise you can make to a narcissist. Caleb prepared our preemptive strike against his kidnapping claims. We are filing an affidavit stating you fled the marital home due to a security breach and a verified intruder. Caleb said, we have proof he gave a key to a third party. You did not kidnap Lila. You removed her from an unsafe environment. And we have a court-appointed guardian ad litem ready to verify she is safe. That night, lying in the guest bed at my mother's rental, I faced my biggest fear. It was not losing the house. It was not being a single mother. It was the thought of Lila hearing someone say her mother was a thief or a liar. I looked at the ceiling fan spinning slowly in the dark. Mommy Lila whispered from the cot next to me, Yes, baby, are we going to be okay? We are going to be more than okay, I said, reaching out to hold her hand. We are going to be free. The court date was set for the following Tuesday. I knew Ethan would walk in there wearing his best suit, armed with his charm and his lies. He thought he could talk his way out of this, just like he talked his way into sales deals. But he did not know about the file on Caleb's desk. He did not know that his girlfriend had flipped. The climax of this story was not going to be a screaming match in the driveway. It was going to be a quiet room, a judge, and the sound of the truth being read out loud. One devastating sentence at a time. The fluorescent lights in courtroom 3B hummed with a sound that drilled straight into my skull, but I kept my posture rigid. The room was smaller than I expected, smelling faintly of floor wax and stale coffee. Ethan sat at the opposite table. He looked thinner, his suit hanging slightly loose on his frame, but he was still trying to project the image of a wronged father. Behind him, in the gallery, sat Ava. She was not looking at him. Her eyes were fixed on the floor, and the softness I had seen in photos was gone, replaced by the hard look of someone calculating their survival odds. Judge Holloway, a woman with gray hair cut in a sharp bob, looked over her glasses. "We are here regarding the emergency protective order and the temporary custody arrangement," she said, her voice dry. "Mr. Morgan, you may proceed." Caleb did not waste time with speeches. He simply connected his tablet to the courtroom display. "Your Honor, I present Exhibit A," Caleb said. The video from my front door camera began to play. The sound of Ethan kicking the wood echoed through the quiet room. We watched Ava try the key. We watched her confusion. We heard Ethan scream my name and threaten to break the door down. The security logs from the gated community were projected next, highlighting the dates and times the duplicate key had been used while I was confirmed to be at work. Ethan shifted in his seat. He stood up, interrupting his own lawyer. "Your Honor," he said, his voice trembling with rehearsed emotion. I was panic-stricken. My wife had emptied the house. I just wanted to see my child. I was worried about her safety. Judge Holloway did not blink. She looked at the video still frozen on the screen, the image of Ava holding the key. "Mr. Rowe," she asked, "do you typically bring a female companion and a duplicate key to conduct a welfare check on your daughter? And why did this companion attempt to enter the premises before you even knocked?" Ethan opened his mouth, but no sound came out. Caleb moved in for the kill. "We also submit Exhibit B and C regarding the financial status of the household," Caleb said. He pulled up the emails. "The unfinished refinance application seeking to drain 40% of our equity. The registration documents for Hart Consulting LLC, showing my social security number but Brooks' email address. The bank statements highlighting the flow of funds to his family members. This was not a welfare check," Caleb stated, his voice devoid of emotion. "This was a hostile takeover of my client's assets and identity, interrupted only because my client changed the locks." The room was silent. Then, movement in the back caught everyone's attention. Ava stood up. "May I speak?" she asked. Her voice was small but steady. Ethan whipped his head around, his eyes wide with shock. His lawyer tried to object, but the judge raised a hand. "This is an informal hearing regarding safety." Judge Holloway said, "I will hear it." Ava walked to the railing. She did not look at Ethan. She looked at the judge. "He told me the house was his," Ava said. "He gave me that key 3 weeks ago. He sent me texts telling me to go over there whenever I wanted because Megan was clueless." She pulled a stack of printed screenshots from her purse and handed them to the bailiff. "He promised me that once the refinance went through, the house would be ours," Ava continued. "I did not know about the fraud. I do not want to be a part of this." Ethan stared at her, his face turning a blotchy red. He looked like a man watching the ground crumble beneath his feet. He had treated everyone in his life as a tool, and now the tools were dismantling him. Judge Holloway reviewed the texts quickly. She looked up, and her expression was pure ice. "The court grants the temporary protective order," she ruled, banging her gavel once. "Mr. Rowe, you are to stay 500 feet away from Ms. Hart and the minor child. Visitation will be supervised at a state-approved center only, pending a psychological evaluation. The court also orders an immediate freeze on all marital assets and a forensic accounting audit." It was over. The gavel strike sounded like a gunshot ending a war. As the bailiff moved to escort us out, Ethan leaned toward me. His eyes were dark, filled with a mix of hatred and disbelief. "You think you won?" he hissed. "You have nothing. Just an empty house." I stopped. I looked him dead in the eye. I did not feel fear. I did not feel love. I felt lighter than air. "No," I said calmly. "I just stopped letting you use me as a key to unlock the life you felt entitled to." I turned my back on him. I walked out of the heavy double doors and into the hallway where my mother was waiting with Lila. The moment Lila saw me, she ran forward, burying her face in my coat. We walked out of the courthouse together. The sun was blindingly bright, reflecting off the pavement. The air smelled of rain and exhaust, but to me, It smelled like oxygen, Mommy Lila asked, looking up at me, squinting in the light. Are we going home yet? I squeezed her hand. I thought about the empty house, the silence, the boxes I still had to unpack. But then I looked at her face, safe and smiling. We are already home. Baby. I said, home is where we are safe. Home is where we have peace. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I would love to know where you are tuning in from, so please drop a comment below telling me your city or country, and let's share our thoughts on Ethan's karma. If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe to the Mia Revenge Stories channel, like this video, and hit that hype button to help this story get heard by even more people. Stay strong, and see you in the next video.